Welcome back to Michael Develops the Suds from consuming too much TMNT content. If you're just joining us, I'm going through the entire cinematic history of the Turtles on the big screen and seeing how well all the movies hold up. Last video, we tackled the original 3 movies from the 90s. In this video, we'll tackle the rest. So let's get into it, starting with... Guys, I have bad news. I do not like this one. Now hold on. I know there's probably going to be some fierce defenders of this movie, people who grew up with it and are attached to it. There's certainly some good stuff in there, but overall, it is not for me. So for some background, this movie came out 14 years after the last Turtle movie did its best at killing the franchise. It is the first cinematic animated Turtles movie, being entirely CGI, which I think was a good decision for this point in time rather than having a hybrid situation. The first thing I really like about this movie is its premise. Splinter sent Leo off into the jungle to do some karate, and in his absence, the Turtles have basically fallen apart as a team. Mikey's working at children's birthday parties, Donnie's working as a tech support guy, and Raph is dressing up in the world's worst vigilante costume as the Night Watcher. Turtles being segmented and having to come back together, like a bring the band back together situation, is a pretty fresh take and something that I think has a lot of potential as a concept, but isn't followed through as much as I would have preferred. Pretty much all the Turtles are ready and eager to work together again as a team, except Raph is having a pissing contest with Leo, so they can't really work together. So most of the movie is just Raph being mad and needing to learn humility, and oh, that's new. These Turtle movies are making me kind of sick of Raphael, if I'm going to be honest, but the most egregious example has not even happened yet. Before I get too far away from it, I also need to come clean and admit that I think this movie is so ugly. I know it was 2007, but you know what else was in 2007? Peak cinema. I'm sorry, but this is just hard to look at. The Turtles look fine, if maybe a bit homogenous, but Casey and April are so weirdly proportioned. They look like video game characters. I just can't get behind it. The environments also feel kind of flat. This never feels like a lived-in New York. Normally, I wouldn't be so hard on how an animated film looks, but there was so much potential to give this movie a more distinct visual style, but instead we just got dark and gritty Shark Tale.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth!
The other thing I really don't like about this movie is the antagonists. The whole ancient blah-de-blah whatever is just really generic feeling. Just because you're not doing Shredder doesn't mean you need to do some crazy time travel related movie. That's the mistake the last Turtle movie made. It's not all bad though. The voice cast is pretty good. Chris Evans here is Casey Jones, and he does a good job, and so does Nolan North as Grumpy. But the best casting is far and away Mako as Splinter. What a slam dunk. I mean, I'm surprised it took this long for us to get Mako as Splinter, and it just works so perfectly, so brilliantly. I bought him as Splinter immediately.
But you must realize that while at times you may not be my favorite student, it does not mean that you are my least favorite son.
Also, some of the action is cool, especially the fight between Raph and Leo. It goes hard, but it's just not enough. And overall, the movie feels just like it has a lot of filler, which is a weird complaint to have for a movie that's only 90 minutes long. It's really short, but it's like they don't have enough ideas to fill that runtime. Most of this is just a pretty generic kids movie, and that's a little disappointing. All the Turtles, Casey, Splinter, April, they're all pretty accurate to what I imagine them as, and they're fun to watch. I just wish they had a better story to tell with them. I wish I liked it more, but c'est la vie. Let's move on to another bad one. I feel like when this movie was being developed, the writers saw The Amazing Spider-Man, and they were like, yeah, let's just do that. These 2 movies are almost always referred to as the Michael Bay movies. Even though they weren't directed by him, they still managed to have his stink all over it. When these movies were being developed, there were tons of rumors about the creative liberties that they were going to take. Everything from the Turtles being aliens, to Shredder being a white man named Colonel Schrader, but more on that a little bit later. I actually have pretty strong memories of the rumor mill surrounding it, in particular, and all the backlash to it. I would encourage you to look into it because some of the leak changes they were planning are real bizarre, but lo and behold, the fans got what they wanted, and the Turtle lore is as intact as it ever was going to be. All that said, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And by elephant, I mean the 4 hulking beasts that we are told to refer to as turtles. These dudes are way too big. They're throwing around shipping containers and tearing through walls. I mean, they are absolutely massive. It's very hard to retain the teenage spirit with the turtles when they're horrifyingly large, and Splinter is, well, I'm not quite sure what's wrong with Splinter, but something's definitely wrong.
Oh, shit! Alright!
Besides being too big, this movie is also a huge culprit of the whole over-designed turtle problem. Look, Mikey has puka shells and sunglasses because he's the goofy one, and Donatello's covered in technology in case you forgot that he's supposed to be the smart one. So the plot of this movie is that April, played by Megan Fox, is investigating foot-related crime and vigilante activity happening in New York in order to be taken more seriously by the news organization that she works for. With the help of Vern, she eventually meets the Turtles, and a very predictable 2014 era plot unfolds. This movie has it all: a shady businessman who was close to the hero in her past but is now evil, a plan to launch some sort of beam or toxin from a building, a dark, grittier tone for a childhood character, Googling incredibly obvious information. I think the Turtles themselves are fine interpretations of them. The decision to make Michelangelo ridiculously horny is one that I can't say I always understand. Plus, he keeps referencing fucking Keyboard Cat of all things.
Have you seen that video where the cat plays chopsticks with the chopstick?
Which, even by 2014, was already an ancient meme. And once again, we got Raphael, who is an even bigger baby than usual, who throws tantrums all the time, even while they're fighting. He's talking shit, and it's just especially exhausting in this movie. I was pretty sick of Raphael by the end. The whole movie has that Michael Bay gloss to it where the characters are all sweaty and stuttering all the time and always touching each other. The movie also makes it a retcon that April is the one who named the Turtles and that they were her pets, along with Splinter, and she saved them all from a burning building and released them into the sewers. I don't mind a retcon like that, but there isn't really a reason to have done that. I feel like it's mostly to build a connection between April and the Turtles so that the audience can buy it, but the movie doesn't actually build a connection organically. The villain situation here is also really weird. I mentioned it earlier, but it's very obvious that before the fan backlash, they were going to make Eric Sachs the Shredder and have him put on the suit right before the finale, just like the Silver Samurai in the Wolverine. They even have Sachs say that he was raised in Japan, and I don't know why else that would be his backstory unless he was supposed to be the Shredder initially. But since they decided not to do that, every scene with Sax is followed up with a clearly reshot scene where he talks to the guy who actually is Shredder. But one thing I can say about this movie for sure is that there are some pretty good sequences. I really like the sequence of them all sliding down the snowy mountain, but of course, no good thing can come without a horny reference in a Michael Bay movie, so we get Vern crashing the truck just so he can creep on Megan Fox for a minute. There's also a pretty funny scene where 3 of the Turtles get injected with adrenaline, and they're just running around for a minute, and I thought that was fun.
Are you okay? Are you okay?
The Shredder suit is also ridiculously overdesigned, just like the Turtles. These just got like knives poking out everywhere. It looks stupid. Overall, the movie is just pretty generic. The finale doesn't do anything interesting, and it just kind of looks like visual muck. I wouldn't say I had a bad time watching it, but I don't have any intention of watching this one anytime soon. Next. Uh-oh, I actually like this movie. Don't get me wrong, it's still got a lot of the issues that came with the previous movie, but it's a lot more content with just being a Ninja Turtles movie than the last one was. Tonally, this is a lot goofier and pulls a lot more from the history of the Turtles. In some way, they definitely got carried away because this movie introduces a revamped version of Shredder, Casey Jones, Bebop, Rocksteady, Krang, Baxter Stockman. So you might be asking yourself, well, does the movie do a good job of balancing it all? No, it does not. Right off the bat, I gotta talk about what I consider the biggest weakness in this entire movie, which is Casey Jones. I am the resident Casey Jones enjoyer around these parts. Something about that greasy, sweaty little man just gets me hyped when he shows up in a Turtles project. So the producers of this movie thought, who better to play him than the Union Buster himself, Stephen Amell. I actually liked Stephen Amell in Arrow quite a bit, up until the point where I dropped off watching it around, I don't know, season 6 maybe. When this movie was coming out, I was still watching Arrow, so I was actually excited because I liked Stephen Amell and I like Casey Jones, and yeah, no, he's not great at it. He actually acts more like a classic Oliver Queen in this movie than he did in Arrow, He's just kind of a bit silly, a bit goofy, just a goofy, silly little guy. I think Stephen Amell has potential to maybe be a good Casey Jones in a certain instance, but in this movie, he is not. The plot of this movie is that Krang and Shredder are working together to pull the Technodrome through into our world from Dimension X. The first thing I like about this movie is that the Turtles are actually the main characters, whereas last time, April was more so the main character, and the Turtles were kind of off to the side, but in this, no, they're definitely front and center. They fixed up their interpretation so they're a little more enjoyable and fun to watch. They dialed back Michelangelo's horniness, even if the rest of the movie is just as horny as ever. For example, we get this April turning hot fan cam, in case anybody was fooled by the wig into thinking that Megan Fox was ugly. Another new entry to the movies this time are Bebop and Rocksteady, who are genuinely hilarious.
My man!
They got a few laughs out of me. I think it's about time we saw them in a movie. It's weird that it's taken this long, but I really enjoyed them and every time they were on screen. I think there's a world where they could have just fought Bebop and Rocksteady in this movie, and it would have been better for it. Krang, on the other hand, is really wet. He's really wet. Sopping wet. I understand the realism, but my god, this is just ridiculous. It's actually gross. Hard to look at a little bit, which I guess was the idea. But ew. While trying to stop Shredder, the Turtles fall into the conflict that's pretty classic nowadays of them maybe trying to reverse engineer the ooze and turn themselves human. I don't love the plot of that a lot of Turtles media has, but I understand it being a natural question, and it actually does sow the seeds of conflict within the group a lot better than some other Raphael-centered conflicts have done in the past. And like the last one, this has some fun set pieces, but there are more of them, like the Turtles jumping from plane to plane and a fight in the river with Bebop and Rocksteady in a tank. I really like how that fight in particular just feels like something you'd create with the Turtle toys. I think that's a good level of camp to have in a Turtles movie, specifically a live action Turtles movie like this. For the most part, this movie keeps that energy, and I was having a lot of fun watching pretty much the entire time. It's not an amazing movie or an amazing Turtles movie, but sometimes a fun and okay movie is exactly what I'm looking for. Don't be afraid though, the finale is still bad. It's exactly the same as the last movie, a fight on a rooftop in New York City in broad daylight, but it's intercut with bits of Casey fighting Bebop and Rocksteady that I forgot about as soon as they cut away from them. You know how like babies, like human babies, part of their brain isn't developed, so when you're not in their line of sight, they think you don't exist anymore, and that's why they freak out when you do peekaboo. That's how I felt about Casey Jones in this movie. Pretty much every time he's not on screen, I forgot. He kind of makes a makeshift version of his equipment from like stuff lying around a warehouse, where he like makes roller skates out of, I don't know, crate wheels, and then like a pipe that's shaped like a hockey stick he uses as a weapon. I think he could have just dressed for the final battle. He doesn't even wear the mask. Like, why couldn't he just put on the roller skates and bring all his hockey stuff and the mask to the final battle rather than having him do this, especially because he does bring that stuff with him earlier in the movie. Also, Shredder's in this movie. I forgot. They even recast him with a better actor and a better suit, but he doesn't do anything besides get put in a freezer by Krang. He does not even fight the Turtles. This was clearly a setup for a third movie that never went anywhere. Ultimately, I think this is a big improvement over the last one. The Turtles are easier to like. There's some good stuff in here. Splinter gives a speech to Leo about leadership that's actually pretty good.
It's their different points of view that make the team strong. A good leader understands this. A good brother accepts it.
And while Raphael gets in another pissing contest with Leonardo, it's resolved in a much more organic and effective way. I wouldn't have been opposed to seeing a threequel after this movie, like involving the Triceratons or something, but I'm not going to pretend I'm necessarily sad we didn't get that either. The movie ends with the Turtles getting Medals of Honor for saving the city, and I really like that bit. I like that Splinter comes out of the sewer to support his kids, and I just think it was a really wholesome way to end this movie. I liked it. All right, one more. Here we go. Yeah, this is the best Turtle movie. Surprise, surprise. I'm not going to go into this one too much because I did an entire review on it, which is linked in the description. But to recap, great animation. It's got a great voice cast. I love all the Turtles. I love April. I love all the villains. The one thing I don't really love is Splinter. I feel like there's certainly some stuff that was a creative liberty that they took with his character that I wasn't always sold on. I love all the designs. I like how the Turtles act so much more like teenagers. And I'm just really excited to see this series continue on. It's got a different energy to it than other Turtle projects I've had in the past, and I really liked it. But there is no Casey Jones, so I'm afraid it's a 0 out of 10. And that's it. Every Turtle movie that has ever graced the big screen. Admittedly, I don't think I'll have an itch to watch a Turtle project for a little bit, except probably Mutant Mayhem when it comes out on 4K. But if I were to rank all the movies, here's how it would go. Number 7, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. Big shocker here, but this one is not very good. Made worse by the rotting, gross turtle suits. Number 6, TMNT. I know this is likely to be a hot take, but I just did not have fun watching this one. Sorry. Number 5, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2014. Despite not being directed by him, this has all the worst parts of a Michael Bay movie and not many of the good parts. Number 4, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. This is where they get enjoyable. It's still not great, being stuck with a lot of the creative decisions that the last movie made, but it is more in line tonally with what I've come to expect from the Turts. Number 3, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze. I made fun of this one a lot, but it's cute and it had them dancing to Vanilla Ice. Enough said. Number 2, the original, and it gets to have a darker tone than any of its sequels, which makes this a much more entertaining one. And number 1, Mutant Mayhem. Not much more to say about this one. It's not perfect, but it is really good. I just love these new Turtles a lot. And that's all. World peace has been achieved. All the Turtles movies have been ranked. I hope anyone watching this enjoyed this little deep dive. I hope you learned something, or maybe it made you appreciate your favorite Turtle movie a little bit more. And I think if this video gets enough views, I'm being told that we can finally get the gritty Stephen Amell, Casey Jones origin story movie greenlit. Hashtag Stephen Amell, Casey Jones gritty movie. Hashtag release the Stephen Amell, Casey Jones gritty movie.